Hello Year 9 students, this is Mr. Shaban, and today we're going to have lots of questions based on the previous lessons. So our learning objective of today is to recap the previous lessons through the questions of the past papers along with the workbook. The key words of today's lessons are inheritance along with cell. Before we start, let's have a quick recap based on the previous lessons. As you know, all animals and plants are different from each other. Even members of the same species show small differences, and no two humans are exactly alike. And this is what we call variation. Some features that vary, which are easy to study in humans, like the height, mass, hair color, eye color, and show sizes. So these are the visible variation that we can find between the human being. And then we have spoken about variation in terms of continuous and discontinuous variation. We can say that continuous variation is a variation that have different values within our lifetime. As an example, the height. For the height, it's a feature that shows too many different types or values within our lifetime. Babies are going to have a very small height. When they grow up, their height increases by the time. So this we can call it as continuous variation. In the other hand, we have a discontinuous variation, and discontinuous variation is a feature that only shows a few different types. As an example, a blood group. It's only one type of blood group that a human or a person can have within his whole life. Another example is gender. So gender, either male or a female, and that's what we can use to differentiate between discontinuous and continuous variation. So continuous variation is a variation that change around the time. Discontinuous variation is a variation that cannot change within the time. It's only fixed, like the blood group and the gender. Then we said that variation is caused by two different things, either by the genes or by the environment. And we said when the variation is caused by the inheritance or the genes, this came as a result of carrying the DNA or the informations from the parents through the sperm and the ovum or the egg cell. These cells are going to fuse together to form a certain characteristic that is going to differentiate you between your siblings or among the others as well. The second factor is environmental variation. For the food supply affects the growth rate of young animals. We have two identical twins. They have the same genes, but one is heavier than the other one due to eating more food. So we can include more as an environmental variation. Not only that, but also the plant grow better in soil that have good water and minerals. So that's another environmental variation. On the other hand, when it comes to the climate affects how animal and plant develop. Some animals grow thicker coat if they are found in an environment which is cold, and other animals are going to grow a thinner coat or thinner fur if their environment is not that cold. Not only that, but also the plant might get taller if they are found in a sunny place, and if they are found in the shade, they are not going to be healthier and they are going to be a little bit shorter. So all of these can be considered as environmental variation. Let's start today's lesson by a quick recap based on the cell. We're going to have the following exercise. I want you to look at the exercise, take a minute to try to put the correct word in the correct place, and after that we're going to revise the answers together. Okay guys, time is over. Let's check the answers. The bodies of all plants and animals are made up of tiny living units called cells, exactly. Some microscopic animals consist of only a single cell, but the body of most plants and animals are made up of millions of cells, correct? There are many different types of plant and animal cells. The diagram below shows the parts that they usually contain. As you can see in the diagram below, we have the plant cell and animal cell. They share few characteristics or few components, and the plant cell have the rest of the components. They share nucleus, both of them have nucleus, both of them have cytoplasm, both of them have cell membrane. While the plant cell has only the cell wall, which is not found in the animal cell. It has as well chloroplast, which is responsible for photosynthesis, along with vacuole, which is responsible for storing the cell sap for the cell. Going to the second exercise, as you know, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take 1 minute to try to match each certain statement with the correct part of the cell. So after a minute, we're going to recap the answers together. So start your answers. Okay, boys and girls, time is over. Let's see the answers together. We're starting with nucleus. Exactly, nucleus controls what the cell does. Cytoplasm is jelly that fills the cell. Chemical reactions happens here. The cell wall covers the membranes and gives strength to a plant cell. Chloroplast absorb light energy to make food for the plant. And at the end we have vacuole that stores the water in a plant cell. So the third exercise of today is based on the variation. What I want you to do is to take also 1 minute, and I want you to complete the words. Here we have no clues, we have no words to put in the place, but we have written the first letter of each correct answer. So I want you to take a minute, try to answer this question on your paper. Get a pencil and a paper, try to write the answers on the pencil and the paper, and then once you finish, we're going to answer the questions together to double check your answer. Okay guys, time is over. Let's go through the questions one by one. We are all different from each other. This is called variation, correct? The two types of variations are continuous and discontinuous variation. An example of continuous variation in humans is height, perfect. We are all different partly because of the genes we inherited from our parents and partly because of our environment, excellent. And every sperm and ovule contain a different set of genes, perfect. Food supply affects the growth rate of young animals, that's exactly. Plant will grow larger in soils that is rich in minerals. Perfect guys. You have mastered these easy questions. Right now we're going to answer the questions of the workbook. So I want you to get your workbook on page 35 and 36. We're going to answer the following exercise together. But before we start, I want you to go through the exercise. It's an exercise based on the variation in the finger length. So what I want you to do is just go through the exercise, take 3 minutes, try to figure out the answers by your own. Once the 3 minutes are over, we're going to continue the exercise together. We're going to answer the exercise together. So you're going to have a clue about the correct answer, at the same time to double check your answers if they are correct or not. Okay guys, time is over. At the following exercise, we have Philip measured the length of the middle finger on the left hand of every person in his class. He made his measurements in centimeters. These are the results that he wrote down. So we have the numbers that he has measured, representing the length of the finger for each person. The first question, how many people were there in Philip's class? we have the correct answer, which is 20. We have 20 values, so we have 20 people. The second question, calculate the mean finger length of all the people in Philip's class, and we need to show the result. What I want you to do is to get all of these values, add them up, and then we'll divide it by 20 because we have the 20 value. So in order to get the average, when we add everything up together, it's going to be 168.4 centimeters. We're going to divide it by 20, so the correct answer should be 8.4 centimeter. Based on the experiment, we have the table. What I want you to do is to get the tally representing each range of lenses. So for 7 to 7.4, we have 3 persons, so we're going to put 3 strokes, and then we're going to write the number of people underneath 3 strokes, so we have the number of 3. For 7.5 up to 7.9, we have 3 persons, so 3 strokes and number 3 will be written down. From 8 to 8.4, we have 5 strokes, so we have 5 people. From 8.5 to 8.9, we have 4 strokes, so we have 4 people. 9 to 9.4, we have 2 strokes, then we have 2 people. 9.5 to 9.9, we have 2 strokes, and we have 2 people. From 10 to 10.4, we have 1 stroke, then we have 1 person. Based on the table, we're going to draw the following bar chart or frequency diagram. In the frequency diagram, we're going to represent each range with the certain number of people represented in the table below. So what I want you to do is to make sure that the bars at the correct height, at the certain height, your bar should end up with the same height which is found in the table. It should not be above or below the value. Not only that, but also it's recommended to make the bars close to each others, unlike what I have displayed over here. I have done it through the presentation program, PowerPoint program, but it's recommended if you're going to do it on a pencil and a paper to put the bars next to each other. Okay guys, we're going to move to the next exercise of the workbook, page 37 and 38. What I want you to do is to go through the exercise, try to write down your answers. You're going to have 3 minutes. Once the time is over, we're going to double check the answers together. So don't waste any time, get your workbook and write the answers. Okay guys, the time is over. Okay guys, based on the previous investigation, you have a clue right now that they are trying to measure the thickness of the wool of some sheep. They have done some experiments to know whether it caused by the genes or the environment. So through the lessons, we're going to compare the investigation result between group A, group B in one environment and group A, group B in the other environment. So the first question, there are 1000 micrometers in 1 millimeter. Suggest how the researchers could measure the diameter of the fiber. Basically in this part we can find out the measurement by the help of two things. The first one, if we have access to powerful microscope, we can find out the width by the help of the microscope. If not, we can get a stock of fibers, and we need to know how many fibers have we used, and then we can measure the width by the help of a ruler, and then we can get this value and we'll divide it by the number of the fibers that we have included in this stock. So we're going to get the number or the value of each fiber by its own. Second question, what evidence did the researchers have before they began their experiment that suggested that genes affect the diameter of wool fiber? I want you to remember the paragraph that was found at the beginning of the investigation, where they were discussing that sheep with thin fibers came from a breeding here that always produced sheep with thin fibers. So basically it's a character which is passed from the parents to the offspring, so it's mainly based on the genes. The next question, explain how the result of the experiment confirmed the idea that genes affect the diameter of wool fiber. The answer of this question, as you know, group A sheep had thinner fibers than group B in both environments, so it doesn't matter which environment you were keeping the sheep in, but the result was always sheep A had thinner fibers than sheep B, which was as a result of different genes. The first have a thinner genes, the second has thicker genes. Next question, explain how the result of the experiment confirmed the idea that the environment affects the diameter of wool fiber. As you know, the sheep in both groups had thinner fibers in the cool, wet environment than in the hot, dry environment. So based on the result, we can understand that's always a plus to put the sheep in a cool, wet environment, because in hot, dry environment the fiber or the wool is not going to be as much as the other sheep which is kept in the cool, wet environment. Last question, do you think that the researchers' experiment was designed well? Suggest how they could improve it. Actually, we have too many factors that can help the experiment to be improved. The first one, they could repeat the study more than one time using larger sample of sheep. The second point, they could try to control other variables such as the type and the amount of food that the sheep ate. Because based on the food, remember the beginning of this video, we said that food might make a person thicker or thinner and might affect the growth rate. Same as the sheep. If you have introduced the first group to a certain amount of food and certain type of food, that might change the result as well. So we need to maintain the same type of food and same amount for all the sheep. The third point, they could continue the experiment through several generations. So when you include different generations, you're going to have a better understanding based on each generation, because as you know, all the generations are linked together by the help of the genes and the inheritance. I hope you have enjoyed today's lesson. I hope you have a deeper understanding by now based on the topic, and I hope you're safe, and as always, see you next time.